Hi, everyone. This is Robert coming at you from a late Saturday night between Thanksgiving and end of semester. I know that you are all busy finishing various projects, or you're not, and you're just kind of chilling somewhere. I noticed that today was the first day of snow on Animal Crossing. This is very exciting. But I did, now that I have read all of your rough drafts, want to give a few last pointers, comments, and reminders before you make your last 2, 3 days of revisions on your final story. So here are a couple things just for you to think about as you move into the last stages of this particular story and semester. All right. We're going to be dealing with some technical things in the rough draft, a couple big picture things, some logistics, just last minute reminders, and then some things about what you might want to do with some of these awesome stories over next semester and moving forwards. All right, from a technical perspective, first things first, remember that I have given everyone feedback. The feedback is in the rough draft assignment box. So please, it pains me when you don't look at that feedback. It pains me not just because you're not necessarily seeing what I have to say and reacting to it, but also because you wind up doing the same things over and over. So please read that feedback and adjust accordingly. That is designed to make you a better fiction writer. So some things in general, the rough drafts are very good. I was very, very pleased with how they're going. I can see almost everybody on the right track with some lovely improvements from not only, the midterm story, but also things where you're incorporating exercises 6, 7, and 8. So really good stuff. And my encouragement here is just to keep going on the paths you're going on. The three things that I want to focus on here in the sentence level, a lot of people are still having problems with the rules of dialogue, punctuation, formatting, indentation. Go back to the rules of dialogue handout, ask questions last minute in the craft forum if you need to. The problem with this isn't just that it's grammatically incorrect, but that makes the punctuation difficult to read and harder to see who's speaking and to connect who's speaking with who's doing what. So you're lessening the value of your story by making things harder for the reader to actually figure out unnecessarily. I'm also seeing still some big issues with the words as and with, again, being used. It's not just grammatically incorrect. Sometimes it's grammatically okay. Sometimes it's not. But these are two words that not only do they put us in some lazy sentence patterns, they make the reader think really weird things that are not the story, and they're just not very precise. Usually, there's much more precision you have once you take out with when it is being misused, and almost always as when you're not using it as a simile. Again, there's the on, as, and with handout in my courses. Please take a look at it, especially if I'm mentioning these things explicitly in your feedback. Lastly, and most of you have gotten this, but I just want to restate the importance on a small level of formatting and cleanliness. I expect this to be perfect in terms of clean, consistent formatting, indents in the right place, asterisks or some other marker between scenes when necessary, spell checking, homonyms. All of that stuff is college level work, regardless whether you're writing a paper, a technical document, or a story. So please make sure that that stuff is clean. It does get in the way of a reader being able to jump into the emotional power of the story because it looks like you don't care very much. And I know you do. So make the paper seem that way. All right, that's small stuff. Otherwise, I'm seeing pretty good detail level. One can always do more, and I will say that in your feedback. The fluffies are pretty low unless you just sort of barfed out a rough draft. Sometimes then you get a lot of fluffies and extras, and if I see a ton, I mention it to you in the feedback. But in general, people are in the right track of being specific to scene so that I can see and feel your worlds, some of which are super, super interesting. So keep going. On the big picture, give titles to your work, please. Titles are sort of the gateway into your story. They're the first impression I have. So I want you to think of something interesting, catchy. I do have an on titles handout that I mentioned a number of weeks ago, so please consult that on my courses. Number two, various ones of you, I probably wrote about big story stuff in terms of either point of view or one of the main parts of the Freytag's pyramid that I don't feel like you're quite getting. That could be the inciting incident, escalations to the story, conflict, obstacles, the climax, or the dramatic question. For a lot of you, I sort of said, I'm not sure you got the dramatic question right. And part of the reason is that, an entire scene doesn't really address, it's unclear what it addresses or it kind of moves back and forth from different things. So make sure that you have a clear answer. If I was giving you an oral exam and I said, show me how your inciting incident works in this story, you should be able to. If you can't, then it's a good sign for you to step back a little bit, rethink it, and then go back to the next draft. Lastly, remember that we're looking for literary fiction, a focus on psychology, material details, language, and so, for most of you, this isn't an issue, but if I have voice concerns in either your rough draft feedback or in the first page feedback, it's a big deal and it is the center of this class. Luckily, I've suggested ways for you to push in that direction so you don't have to scrap everything, but you're definitely going to want to go in the directions I'm mentioning and amp those parts up so that you have a better balance between your genre work and the literary fiction work. All right. Sometimes you write really well, but you still need to push in that direction. So it's not the quality of the work, it's sort of following the assignment there. But also getting a balance. Even in the best genre stuff, there are psychological questions going on beneath that are important to us. And without those, sometimes big plot falls, a little flat. This is even in like Transformers, there's sometimes the smallest bit of psychological question or, journey somehow. All right, that is all feedback on your rough drafts. Again, I've given you feedback on all of them. Looking good. You got 4 days. So here's just some reminders. Number one, I keep begging you not to forget your next steps. There is a final draft or final story next steps assignment box. If you have time, remember that the instructions for that are on the final story assignment. But if you have time, just, part of that can be what have you revised? Because I'm going to be looking at your rough drafts and comparing them to your final drafts or your final copies to see what's changed. So I want you to give me a little hint on what you have focused on. I will remind you that this is all due Tuesday, December 1st at 11:59 EST. You should know that by now, but I remind you anyways. 2 points on grading. For those of you who, some of you are like, I want to write the best story I can, and some of you are like, I want to get a certain grade. And both are fine, but I want to address the grading things real quick. Number one, remember that my course's grades are fully up to date right now, but they are not totally accurate because they assume that your grades for the final project so far count for all 45% of the final story grade. So if you got 100% on the first page, the rough draft, and the next steps, then really what's happened is you've gotten 100% on 35% of the final story. My courses thinks you've gotten 100% on 100% of the final story. So those grades are going to tend to be inflated. Judge accordingly. Grading point 2, remember that the class is designed so that you are rewarded for doing the workload and that balances off the grades for the full story so that you're getting really good grades. You're getting 100% on your exercises and your Friday responses for doing them on time and doing them in the right way. But then you might have gotten, something in the mid-80s for your story 1. The same kind of situation is going to be true for your final story. So, just be aware when you're planning things out that this really does have to be a good story. And the same level of quality will get you a lesser grade than your midterm story. So again, if you're worried about grades, I don't want you to completely lose it, but if you're trying to be smart in terms of your workload, plan accordingly. Nobody is going to be getting hundreds on their final stories. The highest grades will be probably mid-90s, and most grades will be somewhere from 85 to about 93, as they usually are. Again, this assumes improvement. So just be aware of that and plan accordingly. All right. What are you going to do with these? Some of you wrote these amazing exercise aids. Some of you are writing really wonderful stories. Some of you are writing, wrote really good midterm stories that you want to, work on over Christmas or not Christmas, holiday break. What do you do with them? A couple of options. as far as RIT goes, I mentioned Signatures Literary and Arts Magazine, and I do really, really, really encourage you to submit your work to them. I believe somewhere in this is the URL for the submittable, but if you Google Signatures Literary and Arts Magazine, you should be able to find the submission engine for that. Submit your best work, but it's really great to see your work in a literary and arts magazine. Put it on your CV, you show your friends. It's exciting. It's nice to be published. Another thing you can do from RIT in March, if you are not graduating, is the Creative Writing Awards are up. So I want you to submit to that. I believe there's even like a cash prize. Yes, cash prize. That is a lot of ramen you can buy. Also, your ego goes like poof. So please do submit to those things. One you can submit to now, the other down the road. I believe it opens in February and March. Lastly, I don't generally give written feedback on your final stories because people are done for this semester, but I am happy to talk to you about them and write a bunch of stuff up on them and have nice, good discussions about them. But you have to want to move forward on your work. So the key thing here is that I'm completely happy to talk to you. We will set up a time to meet at the start of next semester, and I will be prepared and we'll have a really good discussion. And this can, be a talk about, well, what did you do well in your last story? What's the next step for you? Some of you are still taking, writing classes. Some of you will be in class with me next semester. So all you have to do is write me, and you can write me like today and be like, how about February 20th we meet? And I go, sure, that's great. And then we have an awesome conversation about your final story. So again, I will give you feedback. We just have to have a 10 or 15 or 20-minute conversation about it. That indicates that you are interested and willing and wanting to move forward with the work. Lastly, again, thanks for an amazing class under strange days. And, you did good, smart work. The light bulbs are on. Have a really good break. Get some rest. Stay safe. And I will talk to you next semester. All right, Robert, out.